Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wexler. Without objection, pursuant to Rule 9C, the minority and majority shall have 10 additional minutes each for extending questions.
No objection.
Without objection, so ordered. I recently had the National Archives create an AI search tool to assist with researchers being able to go through all of these documents. So you could type in a keyword and be able to find something. So I was doing some of my own research, and I came across an interesting lead in regards to a conspiracy with the assassination and the murder pertaining to MLK. So here's the, I guess, the series number, and I'll be entering it into the archives.
No objection.
And specifically to this, the reason why I'm bringing this up is Dr. King, there was famously a hearing where the King family was awarded, I think it was, a nominal, I think it was like $1 or something, for basically admission that there was a conspiracy to assassinate Dr. King. Based on what I'm reading here, the FBI did investigate and follow up with 3 specific witnesses, but I don't know that the DOJ ever followed up after that. And for whatever reason, whether it was racially motivated or not, this investigation, which I think is a pretty important thing based on what I'm seeing in these documents, was not, I guess, closed out fully. Can you please speak to that hearing and then also, or that settlement, and then also to how the lack of transparency surrounding the murder of Dr. King impacted public's trust in government?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As a point of privilege, let me first thank you for making it easier for people to access and that number, the file number where we can get the information. We really appreciate that. Also, I wanted to mention an individual's humanity does not diminish their impact on the world, because I've heard little subtle thoughts about that. But as human beings, we want the world to be a better place. Also, the King family really appreciated the 45th administration and now the 47th administration in focusing on what really happened without all of the other issues and things that people want to hear, the salacious things. We are very grateful for the way that this administration is handling that. And so, just as a member of a family, and many of you, I imagine, never had a family member gunned down and shot down. That's my uncle. Then my father, choked and thrown in a swimming pool mysteriously. My father. My grandmother playing the organ and shot down playing the Lord's Prayer in church. So many of you have never experienced that. And at the same time, from the time I was born to today, in those years in the 50s and the 60s, knowing that every conversation is recorded, somebody's following you and watching you. And so I think the transparency, although there were a lot of pages that my family is still trying to go through as well, that's a lot. But I think transparency and truth are so important. This is a time when our nation feels deeply divided, and this moment offers an invitation to unity, to prayer, renewed commitment to those ideals that bind us together. So as someone, like I say, I couldn't even get a telephone call from a little guy who said, "Can we go get an ice cream cone?" without wondering who's listening to that phone call. So I think this is helpful, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King. And Mr. Wexler, to, I guess, then address the elephant in the room to follow on to Dr. King's response there. Do you believe the elements within the United States government plotted to murder Martin Luther King, or are people justified in their skepticism in wanting answers specifically to that? It's not my objective to peddle conspiracy theories, but it does seem evident based on what we are seeing with the declassified documents that there was a targeted campaign by the federal government against a civil rights leader. And it also, to me, based on what we are seeing, for example, in that one document that I showed you guys, that I do not believe that there is adequate follow-up in some of these very serious leads pertaining to a conspiracy to assassinate Dr. King. Button, please.
So a couple of things. So the answer to those questions might seem counterintuitive. I cannot eliminate the possibility that there was elements of the government connected to the assassination of Martin Luther King. My book does not argue that that was the main source of what ultimately killed him. What I can't do, because I know of at least 2 instances in 1968 that are virtually indisputable, where the government knew in advance of 2 individuals, one a civil rights figure, one somebody who we probably wouldn't particularly like, and they
Who is the person we wouldn't like?
he was one of the chief terrorists for the White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan of Mississippi. And in both instances, the other person was Fred Hampton, and people probably find him controversial in some cases. From Chicago, there was a movie recently made about him. In both instances, and again, I may have serious problems with what the former chief terrorist for the White Knights of Ku Klux Klan was up to in 1968, but the government shouldn't be setting you up to be shot. And in both instances, that's essentially what happened. They didn't do the shooting themselves, but they basically put out the information and the red meat to people who, in law enforcement, who were basically itching to do something.
So you do think that it's possible that the federal government either had former knowledge and or pushed people in the right direction in order to commit the assassination of Dr. King?
So a key part of my book is that they were told in advance of what I believe was the plot that was eventually successful. They seem to have
King.
On Martin Luther King. I don't know if it was a matter of incompetence, that they didn't take it seriously. That's absolutely possible in the United States government. But I also know they had informants that they tried to protect. They didn't take things seriously, and I know that J. Edgar Hoover probably wasn't unhappy with what happened on April 4th. So I can't eliminate it. The files, though, that we're looking for, that I'm sort of asking from the House Select Committee on Assassinations, they may be able to clarify that. And to your second question, because of the way Hoover behaved, because of the way the FBI behaved in the 1960s, because of the doubts we have about the JFK assassination, I think, and because of what the black community especially experienced for decades, murders going unsolved over and over and over again, I could maybe talk about the Civil Rights Cold Case Records Review Board eventually. You're absolutely justified in at least asking the question, did the government have a role? So we should do everything we can to clarify that one way or the other.
So just so you know, I actually just instructed the staff, so we'll be following up with the National Archives and trying to obtain those HSCI documents that you're talking about. Obviously not releasing information that was illegally obtained to smear Dr. King, but to look at specifically the elements of the investigation and abuses of authority and power. So we'll be obtaining those. We've been pretty successful, just so you know, and so investigators and the King family knows as well. Dr. King, I have about 2 minutes and 29 seconds left in my time remaining before I go to Representative Burchett, and then the hearing will index. So I'd like to give that time to you to share with the American people or to maybe ask anything of us that you feel pertinent to this investigation.
I like to remember 1963, the night before Mother's Day, and my mother had prepared everything, and our home was bombed. And I remember my daddy going out, standing on a car, Reverend A.D. King, that was in Birmingham, Alabama. If you have to hit somebody, hit me. But I'd rather you go home and pray. My family and I are okay. And those were the first years I was old enough to begin to understand that there were people from other communities who were stirring up anarchy. And the way I met those people, the people who lived in the community went home. And they went home and prayed, and there were strangers from outside of our community there who were throwing bricks and turning over cars and things. And Daddy talked about people, everybody doesn't want peace, everybody doesn't want love. I can't speak to whether it was a conspiracy or not. I'm not here just to give you my own experiences. But I have discovered that if we want peace and unity, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, we must learn to live together as brothers and all that as sisters and not perish together as fools. I'm reminded of my mother, who was a Democrat, and then later in these years, I've been a Democrat, an independent, and a Republican. And I used to work when I was a state legislator with the Republicans, and they're like, you're a Democrat, you can't talk to them. Why can't I talk to you? I didn't know. But there are people in America today who still want peace, who still want unity, who still want love. And I can only urge you, we're one blood, one human race. We all bleed the same. Thank you, President Trump, that's true. I want us to come together without fear, without hatred, without division. And I remember my mother's words. She was so grateful and so tearful when President Trump put their house that had been bombed on the registry, and she thanked him. Well, Miss Naomi, you're a Democrat. Don't thank him. I think I want to stop there. But if we choose love over hatred, truth over secrecy, and faith over fear, then the sacrifices of those who came before us, including my uncle, my father, will not have been in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Your living will not be in vain as you work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. King, and to, okay.